Welcome to Off the Grid Radio. Better ideas to bust you and your family out of today's global control grid. Now, here's today's show.
Welcome again to another exciting episode of Off the Grid Radio. I'm Bill Hyde, your host, and today we have with us Gerald Celente, founder and director, publisher of the TrendsJournal. Gerald, welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me.
You know, Gerald, the new Trends, the summer issue is out, and the TrendsJournal, I'm a subscriber, of course, and I think you're spot on with your haunted by Hitler thing as it relates to sort of a culture and your idea about the flashpoints versus what actually causes war. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's what really kind of haunts you, because you're thinking about a metaphor here, a paradigm between that era and this era, and I think you're really spot on.
Well, I was in Berlin recently, and as soon as I got there, you know, I was looking around and I realized, I said, this place before it was bombed out had to be grander than Paris. The wide boulevards, none of the buildings are probably over 15 stories tall, lights shining in everywhere, and parks all throughout the city, very quiet, and grand buildings, you know, but in between the buildings are all new construction from everything bombed out, and sidewalks, very wide sidewalks, enough for cafe tables, you know, several, not just one, and places to walk and bicycle on. That's how wide the sidewalks are. And it was probably one of the hippest places I've been to, and I've been to a lot of places around the world. But you see these beautiful buildings, you know, from the late 1800s, early 1900s, but in between them, it's all new construction from the 1950s, hastily built after it was bombed out. And everywhere you go, it seems to be the same thing. And you go to Frankfurt, you know, you go to Hamburg, and it's the same thing. And I'm saying to myself, these are the Germans. In the 1930s, they had to be at the height of civilization in the West. I mean, in culture, philosophy, art. I mean, right down. I mean, from Fritz Lang, Marlene Dietrich, you know. And then you look at the history of the Germans. I mean, they're not lightweights. You know, it's Goethe, Einstein, Bach, Beethoven, Wagner. I mean, these are the Germans. I'm saying, how could they let a two-bit freak like Hitler, a guy that Charlie Chaplin played better than he did, destroy their country? And I'm of Italian descent. I started thinking, I mean, you know, we have quite a history ourselves. You know, Michelangelo, Da Vinci, Puccini, Rossini, you go down the list, and we eat a lot better than the Germans. How did we let a two-bit freak, a cartoon character like Mussolini, destroy their country? And then I came back to the States, and I started thinking more about it. And I said, we have a two-bit freak show going on right here. Go over the list. I mean, I don't care what people believe. My motto is think for yourself. As I see it, it's freaks. I mean, Clinton, Bush, Obama, Cheney, Rumsfeld. And you go down the list of characters. They're freaks to me. People follow them. They follow them to their death.
Exactly. You make a good point of that, Gerald. People will fight and die for their freaks.
They will fight and they will argue which freak is better. My freak is better than your freak. How come you don't vote for my freak? Don't you say that about my freak. Listen, I almost got in a fight with a guy at a bar recently. I was talking to somebody else. He butted into my conversation talking about Obama. I said, what a freak Obama was going on the View. I said, could you imagine Eisenhower going on the View? I said, what kind of dignity is that? And the guy said, don't you talk about my president like that. I said, why don't you mind your own business? I'm not talking to you. He said, I don't like you talking about my president. I said, let's go outside and talk about this. And of course he wouldn't. But nobody's going to tell me what I should believe. People give up their lives for this. This isn't a philosophical discussion. Germany has been destroyed. It will never be the same place again. What it took centuries to build up to was destroyed by a freak, and the people didn't have the courage to fight the freaks. And they don't have the courage to fight the freaks today. Today it's the presidential reality show. You want to see a freak show? Tune in. You can see it. Obama and Romney. Pick your freak. So people will fight and die for their freaks. So this is what's been haunting me. And it's not about issues. It's not about, well, Germany was in terrible shape after the Versailles Treaty was signed and following the world. Nah, that had nothing to do with it. Look at the little two-bit freaks we had here, Bush and Cheney. Look at that guy who destroyed our nation, sold us out, gave away all our jobs overseas. Bill the Freak Monica Lewinsky Clinton, who was the guy that deregulated the banking industry, that allowed the criminal banks to take over. Bill Clinton. Who's the Nobel Peace Prize winner that started the war in Libya? Couldn't have been Obama. Now going for Syria, could it? So anyway, people are led by freaks, and they love them. They love their freaks. They will heil their freak. They will put their hand on their heart. They will God bless America over their freaks. Every country has a freak show. And I'm wondering, what is it in the human spirit where people don't have the courage, dignity to respect the integrity and the passion to stand up against their freak?
Well, do you think it's outsourcing in some sense? In other words, we're a culture that wants to outsource everything. Are we outsourcing maybe and living vicariously through our freaks then, Gerald?
Again, you go back in history. It's nothing new. This has been going on. This is just the recent history. And it has nothing to do with the media. People like to blame the media for making us so stupid because of the stupid crap that they put on. It's bigger than that. It's a huge issue. It's been going on for centuries. And how people could be led to destruction by a few. How the many could be led to destruction by the few. And the many aren't bad people. To me, the many is a lot of great people out there. And the great outweigh the bad by a long shot. And I just don't know what it is that prevents the people from standing up. And anyway, that's where my head is at these days.
Well, it's a good thing to be thinking about, because evil does prevail when good men do nothing. And I think that's the point that you're making, is if you don't, complacency is a terrible thing. And I think what you saw after Versailles, as you mentioned, you did see kind of a beat up people and a people that were hungry. Here, Gerald, we're right in the middle of Iowa and Illinois. We grow the world's corn, and I can tell you something. The corn crop, as you've been hearing, is not going to come in, even with the speculations of the downward. I mean, we live right here. Farmers are my neighbors. We know the numbers. It's going to be less than what the Department of Agriculture even says. What happens to a people when they can barely afford the food that they're going to eat? I mean, what happened in Egypt? Mubarak's gone, right? Based on food.
That's right. And people don't realize that. They think it was the Arab Spring was a pro-democracy movement. Had nothing to do with democracy. You know my saying. When people lose everything and have nothing left to lose, they lose it. And people are losing it. They're losing it around the world. We're in the midst of the first great war of the 21st century. It's begun. People can't add it up, and they don't want to. They either can't, won't, or refuse to recognize it. And when you add it up, you mention Egypt, go over to Tunisia, take a trip to Yemen, look what's going on in Bahrain. How about Syria, Libya, or now West Africa, thanks to the uprisings and the destabilization that happened in Libya. Gaddafi was holding that area together. And then you go over to Spain, millions of people, indignados, taking to the streets virtually every other week. Look what's going on in Greece. The entire culture is breaking down. New numbers just came out of Italy, fourth month of recession. Unemployment's going down toward the 15% mark. You look what's happening with the job creation in the United States. This is a bunch of baloney. But they lost 195,000 jobs in July, and they say they created 163,000. How about the ones that they lost? How about the 750,000 full-paying jobs that were lost since March? And how about 30% of the jobs being created now are poverty-level jobs? So you look what's happening. The entire societies are breaking down, and we're moving closer and closer to world war. When all else fails, they take you to war. The panic of '08, the Great Recession/Depression. We have currency wars going on. The real, the rupee, they're down the toilet. You're watching the euro unravel. The yuan, there's a lot of pressure. The Chinese keeping their currency artificially low. Trade wars are heating up. The next thing is world war. It follows the old line. It was the crash of '29, the Great Depression, currency wars, trade war, World War II. It's the same thing. History's repeating itself, and the only thing we learn from history is nothing.
It would seem. Yeah, and doesn't it seem, too, Gerald, like everything is rigged today? Not only, I mean, markets are rigged, media is rigged, the numbers that are released by the government are rigged. Has there ever been a time in history when so many things were rigged?
Not in my lifetime. Not in my lifetime. I was talking to a gentleman. He's about 90 now, and he worked for the Port Authority of New York. And he was an engineer, and we were talking about corruption now. And he said, you wouldn't even think of taking a bribe. He said everyone was so proud to have those jobs. We were doing. We really believed in what we were doing. There was levels of integrity, but they say that the fish rots from the head down. You want to start a fake war? Why don't we do one? I mean, let's go to. Now, I got one for you. Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al Qaeda. Let's kill 1 million people for no reason, spend $1 trillion, sacrifice the lives of our soldiers and their families, because everybody that's touched by it's ruined by it, and destroy a nation for good. So you don't see any people taking to the streets about that. We did one in Afghanistan. It's still going on. So there's no morality. So what you have is that people look and say, hey, if they're ripping us off at the top with all the banks, the LIBOR scandals, the politicians, why shouldn't I cheat? I have to be stupid to play it straight. I have to be a sucker. And so that's the mentality that's prevailing.
That is the mentality. It used to be the mentality of Rome. I think Luther said something to the effect of, the only thing that you couldn't find in Rome was an honest man, and that's been the case during Luther's time and prior to that as well. But if you brought Luther back today, you'd end up, and he walked these streets, he'd probably, if he walked New York City and Washington, D.C., wouldn't he say the same thing? Again,
there are a lot of great people out there, and that's what's going to make the difference, is when the people with dignity and courage and respect and integrity and passion stand up and speak out and claim their place. That they don't cower to power. They understand that they have their God-given right on this planet. No one should tell them how to live it, as long as they respect themselves, others, and have the integrity to live by their word. So when enough people do that, then you don't have these kind of prevailing conditions. But right now, the people just don't, again, it goes back to being haunted by Hitler. What is it that would allow a country as great as Germany, a culture is so proud and cultured and educated and strong as the Germans, give in to a two-bit freak? You couldn't have created a better one. I mean, Marvel comic books couldn't have created a better Bush-Cheney combination. I mean, really. I say that, and you can laugh about it, but it's true. I mean, you want a song and dance man, bring out Obama. You want a corporate vulture, you couldn't do a better job than Romney. I mean, these are cartoon characters.
Certainly, by comparison to our founding fathers, they are cartoon characters. You're exactly right.
Could you imagine Eisenhower going on The View? I mean, could you imagine him sitting there yucking it up with the ladies in the afternoon? Could you imagine him going on Leno? Look who our philosophers are. Two-bit cheap clowns. People comment what Jon Stewart or Colbert has to say. We're our Emersons. We're our Mark Twains. We stoop down to look up to clowns. You want to know where society's going? Tune in HBO.
Well, Patrick Henry on the View. I mean, as you say, it's a ridiculous assumption that those men would even partake in such drivel. But Gerald, as we kind of wind down a little bit here, how can folks get access to the summer issue? It's a fabulous issue. It's a great read. It's a little difficult read because the points are poignant and a little bit hard hitting and sobering, but very worth the time.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's literature. You know, I mean, we put a lot of work into it. And the illustrations by Anthony Frieda are second to none. Our website is TrendsJournal.com. That's plural, TrendsJournal.com. And also, I want to mention that we make it available to everyone. We know that people are having a difficult time financially, so there's a discount request page, and we want to prepare people for the future. You can't predict the future, but you can see the face of it. And if you're prepared for what's coming ahead, you have a much better chance of not only preparing, but surviving and thriving. And that's what the Trends Journal is really all about.
I see you've got Jesus on the cover, and he doesn't appear to be really very happy at all on the summer issue.
He's driving the money changes, the new ones out of the temple, the Goldman Sachs gang, the Citigroup boys, the Merrill Lynch mob, the Dexia, Wells Fargo, all of them. Nothing has changed. Usury, greed, power, not much has changed.
Not much has changed, Gerald. Gerald, we know your time's very valuable, and we do appreciate your time. Thanks again for being with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. All the best. Bye-bye.